Maybe I gotta turn it all the way on. Is the battery working?
I have this on a thumb drive.
Yeah, I mean, I have it. It's not, that's not it. It's just, I mean, well, it's searching. Why me?
Well, the fact that it's up there.
I mean, it's there and it's connected.
Y'all want to huddle around the screen?
Yeah, y'all just talk. We're waiting for people to get in anyway. I'm just stalling. I mean, I know exactly what I'm doing. This is all on purpose.
Is there a biomed in the house?
Anybody good with like electricity or like electronics or? It looks like I have it open more than once. Yeah. Well, it showed up on there now, so that's.
It was on there before that.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, but then it went off. Remember, we had a blue screen for a long time.
The light that shut down.
Found.
See, told you I know what I was doing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start. I'm John Wallace. I'm editor of TechNation magazine. Free subscription. Sign up. TechNation.com. That's the number one. TechNation.com. We have an industry conference next month in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's playing music.
It's not me. I'll be dancing through this presentation, by the way.
There's a presentation using music in the I kid you not, in the 2 classrooms down, and I bet they're trying to figure out where their music is.
Let me just make sure this is.
Did I break it again?
It's not moving.
All right, let's click on it. How about now?
There. No, I lost it altogether. Oh, there. Okay.
I'm gonna go tell them we're getting them. Here's some sign-in sheets. You remember that? The sign-ins just gives us a record of how many people are here. Scan the QR code if you want the CE credits, and we'll send the certificate out to you probably next week.
I'm charging my phone out here. Good evening. The music coming from your phone?
No,
No.
that's coming out of there.
Okay, that's going to be annoying.
It's a feature.
I wouldn't take a touch at anything because I don't want to lose it.
I'm thinking it's driving from here, right?
See, they're broadcasting, so.
Ah. Well, let's see.
It was.
Can we just turn the volume all the way down?
That's what I did.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
All right, so we good?
I guess so.
Let's see if it'll advance the slides now.
Maybe get music on it. You just don't.
Okay. All right.
All right, anyway, Alan Gresch is here today. Great presentation. Good presentation. That's a great presentation for us. Happy hour at 5 o'clock or whenever this is over downstairs. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot. We're so glad y'all can be here. So glad we can all be together again and network. Be safe, use masks if you need one. And yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you for hosting. Thank you.
So you must all be Lutherans, like church, you fill in from the back forward, right? So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Today's presentation, creating compelling messages for the C-suite. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are managers or directors of HCM departments? Quite a few of you. Okay, so this is something that you hopefully will get a lot of value out of, and I'll walk through some of the tenets of communication with the C-level folks, and then I'll walk through some examples of some of the ways that I approached it. So the objectives for today, we're going to understand how to create a compelling business plan, because that's where it all starts. How to deliver more than just a standard PM break fix function. I'm going to break the news to you guys. Vice presidents of operations and C-level folks could possibly care less what your PM completion rates are. Okay, I'm just throwing it out there. Here's why. That's an expectation. That's the price of admission for working in this industry, right? If you can't do that, you don't belong there, right? And so for those folks, it's sort of akin to, imagine if every department manager, director scheduled a meeting with their CFO or CEO and essentially presented to them what equates to, I'm doing my job, right? They don't have time for that, okay? Think about it. There, better? Okay. We're going to talk about how to help your executives solve their cost challenges, especially right now, right? I mean, we're just coming out of COVID, it's a slow recovery. I don't have to tell any of you what the financial impact has been at your organizations. You should know that already. I mean, they're picking up every stone looking for ways to save money. So what does that represent for you? A great opportunity. We're going to talk about how to become recognized as someone your executive leadership team can count on for innovative solutions. Dave did a great presentation on the future of HTM, what's coming, the things that you should know, the things that your executive team should be able to come to you with as the technology expert, right? Because they're looking for ways to deliver care affordably as possible. Right, Dave talked about a lot of the home health stuff, wearables, and the cheapest way to deliver care is not in a hospital. And I think we all know that, right? So a lot of our business is moving away from the hospital. So let's start with creating a compelling business plan. and how to deliver more than the standard PM break fix function. So this is a quote by Jeff Bjork. Jeff wrote a book called Rethink the Way You Sell. It's a great book. I recommend that you tap into some sales training resources, and this is a great one. Let me know if I'm walking away. And Jeff said, if you can't demonstrate that the time with you will be well spent, then you will have a hard time spending time with the right people. As I said, those executive leaders, they don't have the time to get with every department manager and have them report to them that you do your job. That's the expectation, right? But I will tell you that no one, myself included, and I'm sure everyone in this room, no one likes to be sold to, right? But everyone loves to hear solutions to the problems that they're facing, right? So if that's how you're framing your discussions, that you have an understanding of what their challenges are and what they're faced with from a cost perspective, from an operational perspective, and that you've got solutions to that, you're going to make that time with you well spent, right? I wrote an article in the BIT, this goes back a few years, 2009, on the importance of good salesmanship. And these were the main tenets of that article. And it starts out with having a product worth selling. Now, if you're selling GE patient monitors or Siemens MRIs, okay, it stands reason you have to have a decent product to sell. But in our case, your product is the services that you deliver, right? And there was a session here on should clinical engineering or should HDM service beds and nurse call systems? Well, why wouldn't you? If you I understand where we came from. If you've been in the industry as long as some of us in this room, you remember a point in time where these were very primitive devices and there wasn't much to them, right? And so we worked really hard to move away from that, and facilities engineering in most organizations took responsibility for that. Well, time moves on, technology moves on, and now beds have a lot of technology built into them. Most of them, not all of them, have a scale built into them. It's a medical device, right? Nurse call systems. Most of them today have nurse finders, which incorporate RTLS technology, right? This has now moved beyond the capability of most HFM departments, right? So how do they take care of that? They outsource that service and put it under contract at a pretty high price. When it's something that we could do, why wouldn't you want to be part of the solution and say, hey, and let me qualify this, because this is how I always framed everything. I never said no. I said yes if you provide me with the resources I need to do it. Okay? But be part of the solution, right? So have a product we're selling, be committed. Be committed. Be committed to delivering the best possible service that you can, but also be committed to do whatever you can to bring value to your organization. And that means a lot of times stepping outside of the normal paradigm of what an HTM department does, right? There are a number of things that I took on over the years that nobody was taking control of. And it was costing my organization a ton of money. And it's like, I'll do it. I'll do that. Again, give me the resources to do that. So, things like equipment distribution was something that we took on, right? You have no idea how much money organizations throw away. And the way that I did it was I set it up as a subscription model. And I went to my executive leadership and I said, hey, for what's going out the door every month in IV pump rentals, just IV pump rentals, it'll cost us less to implement this solution. And I'll take us from what was considered normal, 42% utilization, just terrible, but that's accepted, right? To 62% in 3 months. I commit to do that. And then all this money that we're throwing away on rent, all this money that we're throwing away on capital because of this never-ending perception of shortage that really doesn't exist, right? It's just we don't have optimum utilization of what we do have. So we'll address that. And then by a year from now, we'll be at 82% utilization and did that, right? But it just takes being willing to step outside of your comfort zone and take on some of these things. Be polished. Be able to be comfortable speaking to executives. Once again, I'm gonna throw something out here that isn't always popular, but if you walk into your CFO's office in your doctor's and polo shirt, and you expect that you're gonna all suddenly find yourself on this Christmas card list, that isn't how it works, okay? You present yourself in a professional manner. I told my managers and area directors this over and over and over again. You can walk into a room, dress professionally, and present the perception that you are a knowledgeable professional just by how you look, right? And then you have to work your way down from there. Or you can go in not looking like that and have to work your way up. You may never get that opportunity, okay? So I'm telling you, it matters. It matters. Do your homework. And this is, again, go into a meeting with your executive leadership. One of the things I learned a long time ago that was extremely valuable is find someone that you can use as a devil's advocate. I'll reach out to Dave or Chris and say, hey, I have this idea. Tell me, if you were sitting in that chair, what are some of the things that you would object to about this idea? And then make sure you have an answer for those things. Because if you go in to talk to one of those executives and they ask you those questions and challenge you, and you don't have an answer, you stumble in any way, shape, or form, pack your bags and go, because you're done. Okay, so do your homework, make sure you're well prepared. Know your audience and what's important to them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but understand the challenges that your executive team is facing today, and there are plenty of challenges that they're facing. And understand what's important to them. You know, cost control right now is paramount. If there's any way that you can save that money, and I'll tell you, this is a great opportunity. There are times in the history of our existence, certain things happen that created tremendous opportunities. Right now, there isn't a better opportunity to go to your executive leadership with a cost reduction plan, right? There isn't. All of a sudden, things that you may have presented in the past that fell on deaf ears, all of a sudden people are listening, right? Because they can't say, they can't turn the deaf ear to any opportunity. I talked about this, tap into available sales training resources, tons of them out there. One I really like is the Challenger sale, but there's tons of them. But tap into some of those sales training resources. You know, I have to talk about this, that who in here considers themselves a salesperson? Yeah, not too many hands went up, right? But guess what? You sell to your staff, you sell to your leadership, and dare I say, you sell to your spouse almost every day, right? And when you're going for a job, you're selling yourself, right? So, you know, get good at selling. Familiarize yourself with presentation tools, and you know, so PowerPoint is one. You put together a really good presentation with a good plan and be very succinct with that. I always tell people, stay away from the gadgets. There's lots of animations that exist within PowerPoint. Some are great, some are just distracting, right? And understand just how challenged for time this group is, right? You think about what your scope responsibilities, multiply that by 10, and it'll give you some idea of what the scope of responsibility and the challenges that your the executive leadership is facing, right? So you have to be as succinct as possible, get to the point as quickly as you can. Be persistent. As I said, you may have presented things in the past that fell on deaf ears, or maybe just the time wasn't right? Don't give up. Don't give up. Go back and try it again. And sometimes it's just the wrong set of ears, right? There have been times when I presented something to my one-up, and he poo-pooed it, didn't want to go down that path. And then, you know, I never want to step over people, but you can bring things up in casual conversation and see where that goes, right? But be persistent. Deliver what you sell. I can't emphasize this enough. So I brought up the project where we took on equipment distribution, and we implemented this RTLS system. And I scheduled a follow-up meeting once we delivered what we had committed to deliver, and I had documented proof of it. I scheduled a follow-up meeting with our chief nurse executive and the CFO and one of our other finance folks, and I showed them that we delivered what we said we were going to do. Okay, and first question out of their mouth was, "Okay, now what? What's next?" Right. So my point here is that when you do deliver what you sell, you gain a certain level of credibility. You do that enough times, and pretty soon, anything that you deliver, it's like gold, right? Okay, I tell you, I just know that whatever Dave comes to me with, he's going to deliver on. So yeah, I'll approve this, right? That's important. And then follow up. The best salespeople that I ever worked with followed up consistently, right? Hey, I'm going to check back with you in a couple of weeks and just see how things are going, right? So that's key as well. I was talking about the books that have been most influential for me, and this is one. It's an oldie but a goodie, right? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it incorporates all of these things, right? Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. And there's another book that I really like called The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander. And as we go through this, I will tell you that that's the most important thing in developing any plan. You have to first believe that it's possible. And you know why it's important to sell it? Because if you don't believe it yourself, good luck trying to convince somebody else that this is the right thing to do. You can't do it, right? Okay. Everybody seen the HTML levels guide? You know what this is about? Okay, so yeah, Ted Cohen, Matt Baratich, and Frank Painter put this together. It's on the second iteration of it, and I think they're about to release the 3rd edition of it. And it's a great tool. I actually talked to Matt about this recently, and I love the levels guide because it talks about the attributes for each of these different levels, what constitutes a fundamental HTML organization versus an established or an advanced, and the things that each one has at this level, and it can be very, very helpful for you to say, okay, here's where I'm at, and there's a really nice assessment tool within that you can go through and you know, assess where you're at different things, and you could be at an advanced level on some things and an established level in other areas and fundamental in other areas, right? But what it gives you is that way to assess where are you today, right? And just a very consistent way to do literally anything is it uses the methodology of what are my goals, both short and long term? Where am I today? What do I currently have that's going to get me to that place, right? What do I still need? And then you make a plan and then you follow that right? And so this can really help you do that. When I talked to Matt about it, I said, you know, what I love about this is it gives you the way to assess that. But how many have read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins? Feel good? Okay. So the premise of that is he first wrote a book called Built to Last, and so what it was is it was about these industries or businesses that were at an extremely high level of performance, and you know he studied the attributes that were common among all of those companies and kicked it out to a bunch of his buddies and said, here, you know, do a peer review on this for me. And they came back with the feedback and said, this is great, Jim, but all these companies, they're up here and we're here, and you have no way of showing how they got from here to here. And that's what prompted him writing the book Good to Great, right? So he used the same methodology to assess companies that had made that jump from average to very high performing and sustained at that high level, right? It wasn't just a fart in the wind. They stayed at that high level. And what was common among all of them. And so I created this maturity curve for HTM and HFM. Kind of does the same thing. And I would say this is the kind of thing that'll take you from cost center, being necessary, looked at as a necessary evil, maintenance and repair focus, reactive and firefighting, and just focused on point solution, which is what's right here in front of me right now, to this future state where you look at your customer focused service business, recognizes the valuable part of the organization, predictive and proactive, total lifecycle management, and an integration of engineering, finance, safety, IT, and logistics. And here are the steps to get there. I have a recorded webinar series, 10 steps. You can go on Accruent's website and find those. But it starts with data structure and integrity. Dave referenced it in his presentation earlier. Without good data, you can't even assess where you are. So you better have good, clean data, and not just manufacturing model and device categories, but codes, right? So you get to the point where everything means the same thing everywhere, right? And then you move to the next step of centralization and standardization. So you get to now you're making sure that everybody's doing the same thing everywhere, so you can benchmark internally at least, if not externally. And then from that, once you've got those two nailed, you can develop some KPIs to say, all right, this is what we can commit to deliver because I know what I'm doing, right? I know where I'm succeeding or where I'm falling short. And that increases your visibility and accountability and increases your customer satisfaction. How do you know that? Because by the way, you're measuring that as well, right? And so where do you start? Well, everybody that I've ever known has used the SWOT methodology: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so your strengths and weaknesses are your internal environment, what your positives and negatives are, and then opportunities and threats are your external. And here's some examples. So your strengths are your physical assets, human assets, structure, process discipline, and leadership. And I'll share with you an example of the SWOT analysis that I had actually done, so you kind of have a flavor for it. Some examples of weaknesses, the lack of any of those things. So lack of physical assets, human assets, structure, processes, process discipline, lack of leadership, lack of negative perception, or I should say negative perception. And then opportunities. And so here's some examples of that. It could be a change in demographics, change in organizational culture, changes in organizational needs, changes in staffing. What's the common word on every one of these things? Change, right? Dave, you talked about that. It's, change can be a positive thing, right? And again, something might not have been ideal to take on, but a change in any one of these things could create an opportunity for you that you can take advantage of. And threats, Some examples: changing customer base, closing of geographic markets, technological advances, changes in regulations, which we face all the time in our industry, don't we? Or some new business or broadened customer base. So here's what I put together way back when. So this is the strategic plan for our HTM department. This document sets out strategic plan for HTM. It reviews strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, presents a series of statements relating to HTM vision, mission, values, and objectives, and sets out its proposed strategies and goals. So our strengths were technical staff and expertise. We had a number of people that were trained on some higher level modalities, and these were, majority of our folks were very, very good at what they did. So that was a strength of ours. Our site and regional leadership was very good. Something that I trusted in and something that I knew I could challenge, people that I knew I could challenge to do more. Strong customer relationships. We had a very, very strong perception of good customer service within our organization. That was a strength. We had a strong reputation for skills and customer service in most of our regions. At the time, we had taken on some new regions where, historically, this group had reported up through HFM, right? And so they didn't have that same level of trust and respect. And then we had a centralized structure and support. Some of our weaknesses. We relied on selling ideas and strategies to finance before moving forward. That's not always an easy thing, right? So we had to work through that and figure out how to eliminate that as a weakness. We had less established reputation in some regions, like I said. Having to overcome skepticism of in-house abilities in less established regions or in areas of new services. So we had guys that were trained to do high-end modalities in some regions, but not all regions. So we had to, gain the same level of trust in those other regions. And then a lack of standardized system policies and procedures, which we absolutely had to overcome. And so we had some opportunities to expand into some new service areas. Lab was something that we hadn't been doing, so that was an opportunity for us. Sterilizers was something that we weren't doing. Again, those are contracted out services. Endoscope repair. Had a discussion with my friend Dave Dickey, who was doing that himself, and I thought, well, you know what? Maybe that's an opportunity for us. Visiting Nurse Association, so a lot of home health stuff. That was a great opportunity for us because they weren't doing a real good job with that, right? So, and then some revenue generating opportunities. Baycare was a big physician group that we had an opportunity to start servicing home health vendors, other healthcare organizations with weak or no in-house support. And then the threats. The threat we all face is outsourcing, right? And so if you don't think those dogs are barking at the door, then you're just not aware of it, because it's happening all the time. Loss of in-house talent to vendors and outside organizations. And it's interesting, I think we've all encountered this, and I had a discussion with my HR department at the time to say, well, can we make them sign something, right? That says if we spend this money on training, that if they leave, then they have to pay back. Nope, can't do that. So, okay, what can I do? Well, what you can do is make your department one that everybody wants to work at. So they don't want to leave. That's what you can do. That's what you need to do. Okay. Low staff morale. At the time we started this, we didn't have real high morale. So this is the vision that we came up with. HTM will, and this is, again, this is where we saw ourselves in 5 years. Okay. HTM will have expanded its staffing and expertise to provide 90 to 95% of support for all clinical applications and systems. It will have depot services for those specialized or low-end modalities that have been identified to be best serviced in that manner. HTM will have developed non-degree clinical clinical engineering aid or assistant positions to cost effectively handle servicing less technical, low-end devices. HCAM will be able to easily benchmark, monitor, and report its cost effectiveness to senior administration. HCAM will have developed an asset management system to the point where clinical management or leadership, site administration, accounting, and finance will have cost of ownership, depreciation, and service history data readily available to assist in budgeting and equipment replacement decisions. HCAM will have established the legal, financial, and organizational infrastructure to be able to market its services outside of the health system. These efforts will translate into annual net savings or revenue generated in excess of $2 million to the health system's bottom line. Is that a compelling vision? I think it is. I guarantee you it's compelling to my leadership. Our mission statement. Dave, you talked about this a bit. What are we here for? What is our mission? Healthcare technology management provides engineering, regulatory compliance, safety, technical, and clinical consulting, and asset management and maintenance management services to serve those who provide care to the health system's patients by supplying them with the expertise to manage their technology safely, affordably, and effectively. We create and implement innovative, customer-focused, and high-quality solutions to ensure the accuracy, reliability, and safety of all patient care technology in a timely and cost-effective manner. I want to go to that, back to that last sentence. Did we say no to anything? No, we did not. No, we did not.
You also said technology. You didn't say technical.
No. Right, right. So these are values, and if you've ever heard Mike Bustiger talk about mission statement and values, is that you need to adopt whatever your organization, adopt and support what your organization's values and missions are. And this was directly from what our organization values were, and we needed to carry that down to our own people. And so that's what our values were. So our business objectives were to expand services and expertise to the point of virtual self-reliance, to become a highly visible, marketable entity of the health system. And our key strategies were these: develop in-house support for high-end modalities, CT, MRI, nuclear medicine, to eliminate costly outside services, complete development of in-house support for anesthesia, laser, sterilizer, imaging, and diagnostic ultrasound equipment in all regions, because we had done some regions, we wanted it in all regions. Develop aid assistant positions to work to push high-end tech services to more experienced techs while migrating low-end, low-tech services to non-degree positions. If you attended my webinar last week, I'm doing like 1 week for a while, but last week it was on the HCM skill level stratification. That's what I talk about. You're having trouble finding qualified people. Okay, so how do it get done when it needs to get done? Start, if you have a department that's loaded up with all senior technicians, and they're working on infusion pumps and other low-level stuff, and not a good use of their expertise, right? So start developing those low-rank positions and offload some of that work to those people. Complete standardization of services, methods, policies, and procedures, while maintaining flexibility to meet the needs of all customers. Again, we talked about completion of the development and implementation of an asset management system. Worked with our corporate IS and CMMS vendor to interface front and CMMS to capital acquisition, accounting, accounts payable, finance, and purchasing system. Develop IS applications expertise to provide support to any device or application that interfaces with clinical equipment. Once again, it's technology, right? Expand our website to features to provide greater value to our customers. So, and it seems so simple, but even something as you have a patient monitor, we have a variety of models across the system, and each with their own lead wires and cables associated with them. So we had pictures of all of those on our website. And here are the part numbers of what you need, because we didn't supply those. We did it one time, which is stupid, because we had people getting called in off hours to bring a set of lead wires here. We put those in such a supply where you could access them 24/7. But if you went to our website, you could find exactly what you needed, right? Complete development of lab services, demo services, parts specialist position. This is another area when I talk about the skill stratification. My technicians, I hired them to fix equipment, okay? Every minute that they spend doing anything other than that, not a good use of their time, not a good use of my money. So I started looking at and evaluating all of the administrative things that they were doing, including ordering parts, you know, doing their part sourcing, ordering parts, following up on partners, doing repair exchanges. And on average, you spend an hour per technician per day, okay? I talk to people in the industry that tell me that it's extremely conservative number. Like parts are a time motion study for them, it's 80 minutes a day. I have 80 technicians at the time. So 80 hours a freaking day spent on part process. Like, no. I have made every single one of my technicians more productive and more engaged. Because what a technician love to do, fix equipment. What they hate to do, administrative stuff, right? So start figuring out what those things are, how to take them off the plate of your technicians. And then again, development staffing for support of VNA, complete a pilot program for in-house endoscopy service, complete development of infrastructure for marketing services outside of the health system. And so this is my 5-year plan. I'll tell you that we completed every one of these things 4 years, with the exception of these two. Why these two? Because number one, once we did the full analysis on what it would take to do in-house endoscopy repair, we couldn't do it as well. That was my mantra. I'm not going to do anything that I can't do as well or better than whoever's providing the service today. I'm just not going to do it, right? The thing is that most OEMs would set the bar here. So that was a good thing, right? It was very little in that country. And so by the time we got to the end of this, there were only 3 things that we weren't servicing in-house. The Gamma knife, the Cyber knife, because they were single, very, one unit of that type, very complex. Just didn't feel as if we would be able to maintain competency on that, as well as the OEM, right? Because they see it every day. And then surgical robots, right? We don't know about how we see this get training in parts from surgical robots. So that's it. Everything else we did in-house. Complete development of infrastructure for marketing service outside of healthcare. The guy that I reported up to at the time was an attorney. So he was the head of our system logistics department. He was also an attorney, and he just didn't want to go through the hassle of, if we put ourselves in a position where we're now competing with our vendors, from a legal standpoint, we would have to go through every single one of our contracts, and we just don't want to do that because we got enough other things to go after. But what we did do is, in addition to our in-house MRI, we took on mobile as well, because we worked with a company called SMS Shared Services that managed all of our mobiles, and they had all of that subcontracted. We eliminated that contract because from a technology perspective, it's the same devices as our in-house, right? So yeah, like I said, we did all that in 4 years. Here's a couple of additional resources that I can recommend: Successful Business Plans, Secret Strategies, and Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher. And I think these presentations are available, so we get to write this up down. So let's talk about how to help your executives solve their cost challenges, and then become recognized as someone that your executive leadership team can count on for innovative solutions. So I'm going to go quickly through this. I think most people understand what's going on in healthcare today, like mergers and acquisitions is still a big thing that's going on, and continuing to ramp up consumerism, people being able to take their care wherever they want to, right? There's a lot of competition there. Telehealth, oh my God, did COVID make that fly off the charts, right? AI and machine learning, staffing shortages, cybersecurity. I'm guessing there's half a dozen presentations at this conference that talk about a number of these things. And then EHR optimization and ancillary technology. So this goes back to 2018, where expense rate growth exceeded revenue growth for the third consecutive year. Now it's 5 consecutive years. From HFMA, also in August of 2018, not-for-profit hospital operating margins hit an all-time low of 1.6%. And then they did a whole bunch of stuff to try and increase those margins. And all of those efforts over the course of a year managed to improve that to 1.7%. And 2.5% is considered sustainable. So you want to know what keeps your executives up at night? It's this kind of stuff. In August of 2020, hospital operating margins were down 96% through July, and that took your average operating margin for not-for-profit healthcare facility or healthcare organizations, -3%. Okay, so you think they're going to be interested in anything, any ways that you can save them money? Maybe, right? Aging workforce. We're all aware of this. The average, the survey that was done by 24/7 this past year, there was 40% of people that responded to the survey were over 55. Now it's up from 33% the year before. The number of people under 35 years of age were 14%, down from 17% the year before. So those are trends moving in the right direction. Add to that low unemployment, 4.2% overall, but 2.2% in the healthcare sector. And we all know about schools closing, right? And Dave Francoeur talked about that. So we all know about the concern about cybersecurity, so I won't dwell on this. This is, I put this up here just to illustrate the things that you should be looking at to get involved. And this was, again, going back to articles that I published in BIT. This one was from May and June of 2011, called Creating a Cradle to Grave Asset Management Program. And these are the components of the capital lifecycle of equipment. It starts with pre-assessment, doing technology assessment. What should I be buying, right? And when? Through the acquisition phase. And then here's where we mostly get involved, right here, right? The support phase. But look at, there are places for us in all of those other areas of the life cycle that are extremely important and can help you save money. If you aren't involved today in the acquisition process in your organization, you better get involved, because that is where you can really have an impact on the cost of service ratio. Imagine what kind of leverage you have negotiating things like parts discounts, G&M labor discounts, response time, literally anything that affects the service. Good luck negotiating those things after the capital dollars are spent. You know, when you still have those capital dollars in hand, you've got tons of leverage. Because, I mean, I can tell you a discussion I had with Philips, who were terrible to deal with at the time. Hoping they're better today, but at the time they weren't real good to deal with on a contract, from a contracting perspective, and they were playing hardball. It's like, okay, we're moving our business elsewhere, and it's simple as that. And we did. We stopped buying from them, and these other companies were willing to play ball with us. I mean, we're a 15 hospital system, so we had a pretty loud voice, right? And then on the tail end of it, the final disposition, you know, how much stuff sits in a closet somewhere that's still depreciable equipment and still usable equipment that nobody knows about, right? So you're spending capital dollars on buying new stuff when you've already got stuff sitting in a closet. It's crazy, right? So again, that's an opportunity to get involved and take those plans to your executive leadership. So I'm gonna try and burn through this quarterly business review update. And, I had scheduled, we had 5 regions within our organization, and I made a point of scheduling quarterly business reviews with each one of those regional vice presidents, because I wanted to make sure that they knew what we were doing for them, right? And again, delivering a compelling message to them so that they wanted to meet with me every quarter, right? So there's a lot of stuff in here that was like a one-time thing for them. And I shared with them, I know how busy you are, right? So I'm going to send you this presentation in advance, and we'll talk about the things that you want to talk about. But I want you to know how this is being framed and why this is important, right? So we talked about what our promise was to deliver within the organization, one of which was our response times, both on routine and non-emergent and emergency callback for both during regular business hours and after hours. And then here's how we performed against that. Okay, and you know this. You see, we started out and it's it was lower than we had wanted it to be, but the fact that we were measuring it every month helped us identify where we were falling short and how we could improve. And at the end of this, that came back up. You're never going to be at 100%, but as long as you strive to reach a level of excellence, you have a much better chance of getting there, and a way to measure. Productivity, they're always interested in knowing about. This is interesting. It's amazing how quickly executives do math in their head, isn't it? So the reason that this is important is we showed the number of service requests by facility, and the way we were structured from a budget perspective is we had an overall budget, and we had a budget allocation to each of the different sites based on what their inventory was, right? And so every one of those guys, I mean, look at how many service requests, and I'm not paying what we should be paying, right? Based on, so that was a good thing to share with them. Cost savings and avoidances. Man, and this is the central region. I love telling this story because, as I said, we moved from outsourced service on our high-end imaging equipment to insourced, and they were about to replace an MRI in one of the central region hospitals because they had issues, tons and tons of issues with an image artifact that they could not resolve, right? So he said, let's hit the pause button here, give us an opportunity to see what's going on here. So not other than doing what every engineer from the OEM did when he came out, is they looked at just the unit itself. I can't find anything wrong with this, but we looked at the total environments, and it was amazing. When they installed this thing, they installed it over, it used to be an ambulance bay. When you went down to the ambulance bay, there was a line painted on the wall that showed where the magnetic field started. And every time they opened that electric garage door, it was interrupting the magnetic field. We solved that problem, and they saved $1.2 million on having to buy it. And that's something. So that was a big one. And just all of the ways that all the things that we did to save them money. And so, again, $1.5 million is what I saved this quarter. Again, you think that they're going to be interested in meeting with you if you can deliver that kind of a message? And I won't go through each of these individually, but this is something that is important to executive leadership. These are the devices that are generating the most money for them. And so they care what uptime is. And I would say whether you're doing the service yourself or you're managing the service, don't throw up your hands and say, hey, it's not me, GE, baloney. Make sure that you know how they're performing against your contracts. And one of the ways that we did that is we had all service calls come through us. The department did not call the vendor. We did. And we timestamped when that call went out. We made sure that we knew when they showed up on site because they were expected to call us and let us know, right? So we could measure what their response time was against the contract, right? And we managed those calls to make sure that everything was done in the timely manner. We did. Before we did this, there were instances where systems were down for weeks. You can't function that way, right? That didn't happen. We took over. So like I said, even if you're not doing the work yourself, manage it so that you do know. And so this is something that all different CTs at the different sites, what we reported out on what the repair hours were per month, number of events, average time per repair, and then potential lost revenue from that system being down. So we did the same thing for MRI. We provided a summary report, again, reported out a number of requests for service, how many of them were completed by us versus calling in the vendor, and then how many were called in after hours. And this was relatively early on in our development, but fairly quickly, like within the next year, got to the point where, other than times where people were on vacation or called in sick, we were doing all the service. So successes, and that, of course, I had to reiterate this one. The 1.2 million savings on the MRI, improved response time, reduced average equipment downtime, and then we expect our staff complete 90% of the training that we needed to complete what we were working to do, and then the regional staff acceptance of calling into the call center. And then some of the challenges, it wasn't smooth. Still dealt with people saying, why should I have to call the call center in Milwaukee? I could just walk down the hall and tap Joe on the shoulder. What are you going to do if Joe's on vacation or out sick that day? Personally, I feel as if you should have to wait for service until Joe gets back. So if you call the call center, they'll find somebody else with the same level of training and expertise to take care of your problem, or I can call it. Right? And I won't go through each of these, but the point here is once we started these meetings and I got these guys engaged, they started to ask the question, what do you need from me? How can I help you? That's what this is all about. So sharing the challenges with them, I called out some of those things. Here's where you can help me. Here's how you can help me help you reduce your costs and improve equipment uptime. And then, some of our future developments, like we talked about the disposition thing, parts. Then we developed a status board, particularly for the imaging departments, because we seem to always be challenged with that. We kept log books in some areas, other areas you talk to, you'd report out to a staff member that was there that the system was back online, and they didn't share that information with anybody else. And so, fingers always pointed back at us. So we eventually developed a status board where people, it tied directly into our CMMS, provided real-time information, and anybody could just go look at what the status of the room was, right? So I'm going to close out here with how to communicate. I learned this a long time ago, how best to communicate with executive leadership. Summarize the summary. Then I use the SBAR methodology. Situation, very clear and concise description of the problem, what's going on now, background, relevant and brief information related to the situation, what has happened leading up to that, assessment. All right, here's the way I see this based on our analysis, and then recommendation. Here's what I recommend. And it's a very good methodology for communicating to leadership. And then as our own leadership held these up as our pillars, It's humility, transparency, and that's it. Questions? Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know. So I've been totally out of my entire career. But I wanted to mention why you talk about it when you justify yourself. But, you know, like in a nonprofit, it's your own, you know, your cost of conversion is also part of it, right? So I might have announced my day, 5 days of operation capability at CT. And look at the average load for what that CT was seeing per day, what they expected to recover the cost and what they were expecting to send that patient back home.
Yep.
And they had to spend that cost to cover the patient. And now so the price. I've been able to talk to resources folks, got those numbers, and then my cost of them is trying to back up to the director saying, hey, this is what you guys
Yeah.
see the guys that subway shows kind of these guys doing. This is your correct result.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you described are savings. That savings number, whatever, that's a profit on. So you were showing a $1.5 million savings. What's your margin? What's your operating margin? Let's say it's 4%. They have to be $37.5 million to see that drop in bottom line.
No, it's a great point, Chris. And here's the math around that, right? So in the best of times, hospital operating margins are about 2%, right? So if you save $1 million on anything, you would have to generate $50 million in new business to achieve that same bottom line, right? And to your point, Chris, it's so interesting how finance people think, right? Because when I talk about the financial impact of that downtime, you'd be like, we didn't lose that revenue. We just sent them somewhere else. Like, okay, how did that impact staff productivity? How did that impact patient satisfaction, which, by the way, now goes into your reimbursement? Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they tend to be real happy people.
I got to say, sometimes you can't see the forest of the trees.
Yeah, and again, I can't emphasize enough how important data is. Speaking of data, Dave called me one time and said, Al, need your advice on something. I said, yeah, what's that? Because I got this Linux engineer. Guy's a wizard, he can fix anything. He's so good at it. I can't get into his documentation. Like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. My organization, that is the condition of employment. You tell me where that guy's going to go, where he's not going to be required to document everything he does. Go to an OEM, those people are like attorneys, right? They have to document everything in a minute of everything. So that's not acceptable. It's had this usual conversation with folks. I want to take care of my patient, take care of my customer, do my documentation. So I need you to do both. I need you to do both because I can't protect what we have here and justify our position if you don't. And I'm not going to put anybody's position at risk because you won't do your documentation. I'm not going to allow that. So life's about choices, my friend. Right? Your choices, you want to work here, you will document, period. And we had a pretty strong data integrity policy around that. And a statement in there that said failure to comply with this policy will result in disciplinary action or including termination. Now, I never had to force that. You just set expectations. I mean, most of our guys, almost all of them are high-level professional people. They want to do the right thing as long as they do the right thing. If you love them or I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and make a very harsh statement sometimes. Where I say, I will always take the first bullet, always. So if somebody's not in compliance, I'll have this discussion with them and I'll say, look, I'm going to make the assumption that I didn't explain it clearly enough what the expectations were. Okay. So I'll repeat what the expectations are, and then you repeat back to me what you think I said, right? So that I'm clearly understand. And then if it continues, either A, you're doing it on purpose, or B, you're too stupid to understand what I'm telling you. In either case, you can't work for me. Sounds harsh, but like I said, I've never had to enforce any of those things.
It's a good segue to the 4 o'clock session. You guys should attend that one. Here's some of the discussion towards that.
All right, thank you, Chris. Any other questions? All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
I don't know if you remember me, but I talked to you one.
Yeah.
But I told you I would talk. Session.